On the outskirts of town, in a place no one had visited for years, the old museum rose against the night sky. Once, it had stood in the very heart of the city, but after the Great Fire, the surrounding buildings had turned to ash. People never returned, too afraid of what lingered there. When the city was rebuilt, this area was left outside its limits, and the museum remained, abandoned, crumbling in silence. Our task was, at least on paper, straightforward: examine the area where the museum stood and prepare notes for the demolition plans. But the moment we set foot on that uneven, stony path, the weight of the place pressed against us. Daniel walked ahead with slow, measured steps. Mark followed behind me, silent as the night itself. None of us spoke, but the unease was etched into our faces. The building loomed like a dark monument. Its facade, built of once proud stone, was blackened in places, cracked in others, with moss creeping over what remained. Most of the windows had shattered. Those still intact were so clouded with grime that no light passed through. Above the entrance, the faded letters of what had once been a grand sign were barely visible. We didn't have to go inside, but our curiosity pulled us toward the door. When we reached it, we noticed the heavy locks had already broken, rusted away with time, or perhaps forced open by someone else long before us. I pushed against the iron door, and its shriek echoed into the hollow corridors beyond. The air inside was colder than outside, thick with damp and the faint, lingering scent of burned wood. Each step across the cracked tiles sent sharp echoes into the silence. Daniel swept his flashlight across the walls, revealing frames still clinging to them. Most of the glass had shattered. The faded images within were barely recognizable. The first hall opened wide, its high ceiling swallowed in shadow. The grand chandelier that had once illuminated the space now hung twisted, most of its crystals missing, its frame bent and rusted. At the center lay the remnants of a shattered display case, no artifacts inside, only ash and dust. In the pale beam of our lights, the suspended dust shimmered, yet every breath carried it into our throats, sticking like cobwebs. Mark slowed and glanced back, his brow furrowed. I felt it too, the sense that someone else had slipped in behind us, but the doorway remained empty. Still, our steps grew quieter, our movements more deliberate, as if noise alone might awaken something hidden in the walls. We turned into a side chamber. This had once been a gallery of statues. Most lay toppled and fractured, their stone limbs broken apart. One figure sprawled on the floor, its face shattered, but somehow, its hollow eyes still seemed to stare at us. Daniel's light swept across the room, throwing the broken forms into jagged shadows. For the briefest instant, I swore I saw something shift between them. We didn't linger. Back in the corridor, large paintings still hung on the walls, scorched, but intact enough to reveal haunting details. One canvas in particular drew me in, a crowded scene, rows of people standing shoulder to shoulder. Though parts of the painting were blackened, the faces remained disturbingly clear. Their eyes seemed alive, following our movements. "Feels like this place was never truly left behind," Mark muttered under his breath. His voice unsettled me. I didn't ask what he meant because I already knew. Whatever had happened here hadn't simply burned away. It lingered. It watched. The next hall held the remains of glass cases, their shattered contents strewn across the floor. One case contained the scorched remnants of children's toys, wooden dolls, small carved animals, tiny cars, all blackened by fire. As I leaned closer, the faintest sound brushed my ear, a child's laugh, fleeting, carried like a whisper of wind. All three of us froze. The beam of Daniel's flashlight darted across the room, but there was nothing there. Still, the air had shifted, pressing heavier around us. It wasn't just a sound, something had been with us, if only for a moment. At the corridor's end, we entered a wide chamber. A thick stench hit us instantly, the acrid smell of burnt fabric mingling with damp rot. Dusty tables lined the room, once used for displays. Against the far wall hung a charred, broken boards still clinging to dozens of photographs. We moved closer. The images showed faces, villagers, families, children, all once part of this place. But some faces were unrecognizable, blackened out by burns. Others bore strange marks across them, as though fire itself had chosen whom to erase. "It's like these photos burned twice," Mark whispered. His voice trembled. As we pressed forward, faint crackling noises began around us. At first, I thought it was just the floor beneath our boots, but it wasn't. The sound came from the glass displays, their fragments grinding softly against one another, like a chorus of delicate, breaking bones. Daniel flinched back, raising his light toward the cases, but the sound continued, rising and falling like a rhythm. We stumbled into another chamber filled with books. Most were nothing more than blackened piles of ash, but a few remained on the shelves. One lay open on the ground, its brittle pages half charred. The strange thing was that its cover had only just fallen open. Daniel raised his flashlight, and as the beam struck the pages, they shifted, turning ever so slightly. There was no breeze. "Let's go," Daniel muttered, pointing to the door. I tried to move, but then came a sound like a whisper, soft and indistinct, but undeniably human. Mark's eyes met mine. He'd heard it too. None of us spoke. We only quickened our pace. At last, we reached the final corridor. Moonlight spilled in through broken windows, illuminating long streaks of blackened stone across the floor. For a moment, I imagined the silhouettes of burning bodies had been seared into the very ground. My chest tightened. This place didn't just hold memories, it held pain. Centuries of it. Then, behind us, footsteps, distinct, heavy, deliberate. But there were only 3 of us, and all of us stood frozen. We turned. The corridor lay empty. Yet the echo of those steps remained, a reminder that we were trespassers here, walking through lives long extinguished. When we finally emerged outside, the night air felt no lighter. The moon was gone, hidden by heavy clouds. Silence hung between us. Daniel's gaze was fixed on the horizon, while Mark kept his hands deep in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. None of us dared to speak. The only sound was the creak of the museum doors closing behind us, as if sealing us out. As we walked back toward the town, my thoughts turned heavier with each step. This museum had never just been a building. The Great Fire had destroyed more than its walls. It had consumed a whole community, leaving only these ashes, these remnants of lives cut short. And as the realization pressed in, I slowed. It wasn't only fear that weighed on me, it was the unmistakable presence of all those lost souls. They lingered in the shadows, in the photographs, in the stones themselves. That was when the truth settled in, sharp and undeniable. The museum was no relic, no simple ruin. It stood at the very heart of what had once been a thriving settlement. The people who burned in the fire had lived here, died here. We hadn't just inspected a forgotten building tonight, we had walked through the ruins of their home,